to get us started in the meantime. I don't know who's going to come in when, but it's now a 1:01. So what I'm going to do is, it's 10:01. I'm going to read our opening prayer, and then I'll ask David to read his opening quotation.
Thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
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 So, let me get to, I think where the bookmark fell out, and I don't know where we stopped. I think I know where we are.
While you're looking for that, can I do my?
Sure.
Okay. When I was in college, the Byrds were one of my favorite singing group. The Byrds, Bob Dylan, the Beatles. And the Byrds had two songs that I just adored, Mr. Tambourine Man and Turn, Turn, Turn. Do everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. It turns out that beautiful song is taken right out of Ecclesiastes.
Yes.
And I'd like to read that right now. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Thank you, David.
Very, it is an excellent passage. Thank you for reading that.
Thank you.
I don't, oh, here she is. Okay. Okay. Oh, golly. Well, I'm not sure. My bookmark fell out of the book while I was turning pages. And I know did we finish Exodus 35? Is that where we stopped?
Oh, yeah, we're in the middle of 36,
We're in the middle of 36.
but I'm not
So
exactly
then,
sure where.
Are we at verse 20?
That sounds about right.
Because I know we spoke about the different chores, putting things together and like that. Okay. So David.
Yeah, we just finished the part where the sockets of the boards were made of silver. I remember having a question about that.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay.
You want me to start
So I
with
guess why don't we start at verse 14?
14? Okay, here we go.
14. So you're at 36:14.
And he made curtains of goat's hair for the tent over the tabernacle. 11 curtains he made there. The length of each curtain was 30 cubits, and 4 cubits the breadth of each curtain. The 11 curtains had one measure. And he coupled 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves. And he made 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that was outermost in the first set, and 50 loops made he upon the edge of the curtain, which was outermost in the second set. And then he called the Pima County Property Department to inspect. And he made 50 clasps of brass to couple the tent together, that it might be one. And he made a covering for the tent of ram skins dyed red, and a covering of seal skins above. And he made the boards for the tabernacle of acacia wood, standing up. 10 cubits was the length of a board, and 1.5 cubits the breadth of each board. Each board had 2 temons, joined one to another. Thus did he make for all the boards of the tabernacle. And he made the boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards for the south side southward, and he made 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under one board for its 2 tensons, and 2 sockets under another board for its 2 tensons. And for the second side of the tabernacle, on the north side, he made 20 boards, and there 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under one board and 2 sockets under another board. And for the hinder part of the tabernacle westward, he made 6 boards, and 2 boards made he for the corners of the tabernacle in the hinder part, that they might be double beneath. And in like manner, they should be complete unto the top thereof, unto the first ring. Thus he did to both of them in the 2 corners. And there were 8 boards and their sockets of silver, 16 sockets, under every board 2 sockets. And he made bars of acacia wood. 5
Okay, let's stop it at this
Acacia
point.
wood.
We'll pick it up because otherwise it'll be a very long and reading right now. Let's take a break and
Thank
then
you,
go
Marty.
back.
Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome. So the question, any first of all, any questions or ideas, comments about what we've just read? Yes, Don. And then we'll go back to David. Yes.
First, regarding the construction, the modern carpenter term for the sockets is a mortise. So you have a mortise and tenon joint, which is very close fitting, but makes for easily disassembly and assembly. So it was clear that this structure was intended to be transported as
Yes.
the lights moved. I still come back to the question about why silver was employed in the joints, because when you read the full construction, it enables a complete electrical circuit throughout the entire structure, which I find really interesting and connected to a number of other hypotheses by other people. But my main observation is that it speaks portability. if nothing
Right.
else.
But you are right, Don. Especially when you have garments of linen and wool. We know those of you may remember rubbing a glass rod, okay, and holding it to a Leyden jar, where the foil is held together and then spreads apart because of the electric charge. I won't go into all the fancy stuff, but that's what also when you have that and you're rubbing, just walking around, sometimes a spark will jump, and sometimes you'll shock someone if you touch them. Okay, so this is what Don's getting after. Before I recognize Amy, David, your turn, and then back to Amy.
While I was reading this, I was really impressed with how clear those instructions are.
Yes.
I mean, we could actually use them right out of Exodus and build a tabernacle with it. It also reminded me when I was watching the construction of the observatory in the last few years, or the rebuilding of our observatory, that there was a lot of similarities, and the thoroughness of the Exodus directions was really amazing and interesting to me.
Yes, it is very interesting. And contrary to what a lot of people feel, a lot of the mathematics for doing this was already known by the Egyptians and the other neighboring areas. The Babylonians understood some of it, and so did the Greeks. Okay, so it's over a span of time. I mean, I'm talking about a span of time, but a lot was known about measuring using the length of shadows. Anyone who is a Boy Scout knows that you can tell the time of day very easily that way. You can use a tree as a sundial and to help give you direction.
This is
certain-
how IKEA started.
Yeah.
It's how IKEA started.
Okay.
It-
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is very important, and also when you're looking at stars and like David is very familiar with that. So this ties into so many different subjects, the mathematics involved and like that. But yes, the detail is very mathematical and does allow you to reconstruct this type of building. Amy, you had your hand up.
I'm very intrigued by what Don said about the electric circuit, a completed electric circuit. Do you know how that was used or what the purpose for that was? Because I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it had to have been intentional,
Yeah,
but I'm just curious to know the intent.
I have done a lot of research. No,
Yes, Don.
I'd like to answer that, Amy, if I may. If you read elsewhere, as the Israelites were traveling, it was Moses' policy, as soon as they stopped at any place, that he erected tall poles with brass fittings at the very top, which turned them into lightning arresters. Because at that time, there were severe electrical storms in progress.
Wow.
If you couple the fact that each camp was surrounded by a ring of tall lightning arresters, which is how they're described, and the fact that the tabernacle was also electrically conductive, there's at least room for a hypothesis that the engineers there knew a lot about what they were doing. And especially the Kenites, because the Kenites, if I'm not mistaken, were the metallurgists in the group. And they had centuries of knowledge about this. So I think it's kind of an early, you won't find that in any Torah study, but
Right. It's not but it's all theorized, but you start wondering about the conductivity, but static electricity and the potential for lightning rods, however you want to discuss it, at least that's a theory that's out there.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. Grace had her hand up.
Thank you, Don. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Maybe. Yeah.
Grace, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I have a little question about the end of, I'm sorry, I had to take a break. Ricky needed to talk to me for a moment. So did you read through chapter 18?
We're way beyond chapter 18.
I'm not chapter, verse. I meant to say verse 18 in chapter 36.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so at the end of that verse, my reading says, it came together as one whole.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
WHOLE.
Oh, okay. You're in a. Yes. Okay. We're still.
So
Yes,
is it,
it is a very
they
safe
made
team.
50
It
covered
makes
class,
one whole,
couple the
yes,
tent together so
Yes.
that it might become one whole?
yes.
Is that speaking of unity, perhaps?
Oh, very much
The,
so,
the importance of it?
very
I
much
was
so.
just wondering if that's my thought.
Good observation,
Well,
very
thank you.
good observation. Thank you.
I'll lower my hand.
Okay. Michael,
I think it's like gold, like a silver doesn't tarnish, right? Like gold.
well,
Doesn't tarnish.
gold
Oh,
doesn't tarnish. It's the other
Yeah,
way around.
yeah, gold
Gold
doesn't tarnish, but
doesn't
the
tarnish,
silver tarnish.
but silver tarnishes,
Oh,
yes. You get silver oxide and sulfide deposits on the outside. Yes. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
This is for Grace. The idea is that at first they had one wall. That's what they had to do. With the singing, handing, and everything handing on 4 sides. And then they put together so it became one, meaning that it closed it, that the end of each one, the corners, were becoming together. So now you have like a house, like a 4 sides house.
Very
Am
good
I clear?
observation.
Probably not. You see, here it was one.
Right.
And then if I want to have it in flat, if I want to build a house, I need to put it together with the one beside it. So now it becomes one, and then in the next corner, they do the same way, and you have a cube. That's the tabernacle. If you don't have any more questions about the measuring and the, I have a question for all of you on the English word called tabernacle. What is a tabernacle in other contexts? And this is a pure question that I don't have an answer to. That's why I'm asking the natives.
Good question.
Tabernacle, where would you use it in other places, in another sentence?
House of worship.
Tabernacle
Because then
is
that
out of-
covers lots of different other subdivisions of that.
Yeah, and the in Los Angeles, you have the Tabernacle of the Mormon. The
Yeah,
Mormon
Oh,
tabernacle.
I see.
So
Okay, okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it would be like a shul and a church and so forth.
yeah.
Right? Now, what does that mean? What does it mean, a place of worship? Why it's not my house?
Okay.
what was that? Can you repeat that?
Well, why, if a tabernacle is a place of pray, like a church or synagogue and so forth, so why my house is not one of these?
Well,
It
it's
can be.
Yeah,
You don't need it,
I mean,
but as a group, getting together in one place.
Okay,
Okay. It's another
Good
song,
point.
if I remember, Peter, Paul, and Mary. I wish the Rabbi Norman was here. People coming together to worship as one. It's a
Okay.
community of, it becomes one with a capital O.
okay. Now I want to tell you the word in Hebrew has nothing to do with that.
That's
The
right.
word in Hebrew means wherever God lives, shochen. We call it mishkan. Mishkan is tabernacle, the translation, but mishkan is the place in which God lives. So then you can say, okay, that's why I prayed there, because that's where God lives. And that's a big question that we are going through now. We are building a place for God, which is an interesting concept, and I invite you to think about it in our religion, in our way of living. Do we have a special place for God to live in?
That's
A
an
thought.
excellent statement. But I'd like to amend that for a second. I'm sure I have been in several locations where I've been moved spiritually. And I'm just going to mention two. One is Yellowstone. Okay. And the other is the Sequoia National Forest.
That
Okay.
would be a personal,
Yeah. And in Yellowstone, I was able, it happened on a Sabbath. And I conducted a Sabbath service in my own head. And, you know, I just went through the service that way.
it's something that moved you. You saw
Yes,
that,
yes.
and
So-
you was moved to a point where it became spiritual. You saw
Right.
something very special in there, and I
So
would say,
the question is, do we need a temple in order to pray?
No.
you don't. However, it would be the normal thing, because prayer, when you pray, it said that when you pray in numbers, it has more power. There's a
Right.
little bit more power behind it when you
Right.
have a group, and that's why we have a community. The Jews always have this community. Talk about community, and you meet in a particular place. Not only you pray, but you also in a closed environment that is dedicated to God. You are addressing God. And
Yes.
it's true, you can address God any place you want, but
Okay, Michael, you've created a tremendous service here because hands are going up. Okay, so I want to. It's true. A temple as a whole, it's communal because it seems like it's more up. Your prayers are magnified. And that's what you're getting after, because everyone is doing the same thing at the same time.
can I finish?
But yeah, you go ahead and finish, and then I'll let Amy and then Don.
See, the reason I connected with what you said is because I've had that experience more than one time, and that was where at the Marina del Rey, where I had my boat.
Mhm.
The water was very spiritual to me, incredible. So I could relate to that.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, Amy.
I want to respond to something you said, Marty. I was thinking before you even said it, that I have
Oh, Amy's frozen.
been in a
Whatever reason.
woods, a forest, kind of meet and make kind of a beautiful roof. And that's
Yes.
often called a tabernacle. It's a place where you're sheltered, where you feel protected, where you're to be at peace with your own thoughts and praise God. Just acknowledge Him for the beauty around you.
That's a good point.
Is an idea that may carry forth into tabernacles that we erect ourselves.
Sure.
Okay,
Very good.
I agree with all of you. And Amy, I've been in a place near north of San Francisco, and the trees. We were in a youth
Mere Woods.
and that's the
Mere
Huh?
Woods.
Yeah.
M-U-I-R.
in the
Mere
area, the big
Woods.
ones, the big,
That's
big,
right.
and they
That's right.
really connected. And that's the place in which the camp created the synagogue, the shul for prayer. Now, my point is that look at all these details that they give us to build something, a place for worship, when all of you pointed out that there are spaces in which you are so overwhelmed, so thankful, so small versus what's there, that is so spiritual. So, so there is here a dichotomy of building something with all the details that come up to be a tabernacle, and the experience that all of us, I'm going to include myself too, have in certain places. So I just put this for a thought, because we're going through all these, you know, it bugs everyone, all these details. But the idea is that, and who said community? Michael, that yes, it's to gather not just myself into that place of worship, but to bring other people together. That's the role of the temple. That's the role of the synagogue.
Right.
But when we call building something, and these days they build these buildings for a tabernacle that might be a place of worship, and in the Hebrew word mishkan is the place where God dwells. And if you recall, at one point, God says, you build me a tabernacle, and I'm going to live among yourself or inside yourself. So both things will work. God is going to be among the community, the people in the, but it's also going to be in each one of us to do what you described. And I put it out because I think that we have to think about how much they are put into this building and how much synagogues raise money for a building, and the bigger the better. So these are thoughts that we have to carry in mind.
Very, very well stated. Thank you. Thank you very much. Don, and then over to David.
Thank you, Marty. I think we're in danger here of confusing a couple of things. First of all, a tabernacle in our modern sense is usually erected for lack of external stimulus, you know, a visible presence of God. You know, there's no big lightning bolts or events happening. People go there because they have to create a sense of togetherness in their minds and souls, because there is no external stimulus. But the tabernacle we're reading about, God is right there, and he is explosively present. And with the purpose of the tabernacle was to conduct blood sacrifices to God. That was the only purpose, was to have a place to slaughter animals. And so we need to be careful about confusing those two things. And this occurred to me when some years ago I did some volunteer work for a few months in Guatemala. And for a few days I stayed in the city of Antigua, the ancient walled city, which is right up against Mount Fuego, an active volcano. And I mean, it's this monster smoking, glowing mountain. It was right there, you know, 100 yards away. And I was imagining the ancient Indians. They didn't need a quiet tabernacle to sense of divine presence, because here's this tremendous mountain with hot lava flowing down all night and threatening to explode at any second. So I think we just have to be aware of the difference between that kind of stimulus and our need to get quietly together in awe. That was kind of long-winded, but I think I said what I was trying to say.
What happened, I took a leap because we have replaced sacrifices with prayer.
Exactly.
Okay, so today,
Exactly.
but that's the worship part. But what Rabbi Miri and Don have been getting after is that it's a sense of when you see other people doing the same thing at the same time, it gives you a feeling of strength. And
Yes.
there's a lot said about prayers in unison and the strength of God and like that. There are commentaries about that. Very good, Don. Thank you. Now, you can also feel this way when you look at the heavens. David, you're on.
Actually, thank you. I was taught that the term tabernacle really referred to a place of gathering, Beit HaKnesset, because of the idea of, in fact, our rabbi taught us that even almost more than prayer, it is a place where the people can gather, which is extremely important to me as well.
Mhm.
Growing up.
And putting it very good, David, because putting this all together, what Don, Rabbi Mary, and David have now said, you certainly can have prayer alone, but there is a big difference when it's done as a community. The feelings are changed. So I thank you for that contribution. And that's really what this whole passage is about. How you take individuals and make them into a community. Okay, and that's so it's important to understand that even with prayer, okay, sort of set you guys up for this. Even with prayer, it is better to do it with others rather than doing it alone, because that's the sharing of a community. And it's a very important thing. But there's one other aspect to this. You couldn't do it without all the details and all the different people who could take care of each of the details. There is, I think, Maimonides said that Bezalel did the basic work on the altar, and then everything else was done by other people. Somewhere in the I read that. If that is, so it doesn't matter if he was in charge or he did it all. That's not the important part of the story. What is important, that it required a community to put it together. And that is the most important thing. And that's what Don and Rabbi Mary were getting after. And that's where the whole passage is going. Yes, Michael.
I think it's about unison, the unity. And so everybody would be understanding, everybody would be on the same page, and there wouldn't be things going flying back and forth with different ideas and different concepts, but a situation where we would all be on the same page, worshiping correctly, which we believe, and about just in unison.
Sure. Excellent point. Grace, thank you for getting us started on this discussion.
I didn't mean to jump ahead. It was just I read it after
It's
you
a
had
very
read.
important. It's a very important concept. Because by the way, there are tons of philosophers that talk about the importance of the individual or the importance of the group or the nation or whatever. It's a theme that has been with us throughout the ages. So I think that it's a very important concept. Thank you all. Any other comments?
Um,
Yes, go ahead, Michael.
I don't, why is it that we weren't using, instead of the word tabernacle, why we weren't using the word temple? Or was it the word synagogue at that time was not used?
Well, the temple, a permanent place, a permanent structure was not even considered back then. It had to be portable. The Israelites were nomads, and where would they be settling if they did have a chance to settle? What was their destination?
The land of milk and honey, Jerusalem.
Okay, well, that comes later. That comes later, but at this time it's Canaan. It's Canaan. God is going to move them into that land. And then Jerusalem it comes, then David and Solomon, they build the temple and so forth and get it started. So and then the rest is history, if you will. So I think the timeline is important, but here what Rabbi Mary said about Mishkan is very important. You don't have that many different ways of determining things in English. And so they would have said either tabernacle, but knowing that there wasn't a temple built yet, a permanent temple built, tabernacle, place of worship.
And
So I think that's why the choice of the various commentators. Yes, Don, and then Michael.
I think we have to also realize we can't talk about the tabernacle without talking about the ark. Because
Correct.
It's a system. It's all part of the same system of worship.
That's right.
So
in some of the, I just want to add to what you're saying, Don, and then I want Michael to finish what he was saying. If you look up some of the diagrams of what the tabernacle might have looked like, you can Google this. I mean, there are lots of different ideas, but you'll get to see what it's like. And there are several different concepts, but the temple was also constructed using this as a guide, as was mentioned by Don also. Yes, Michael.
The specific details in building this tabernacle, which is portable, means it's going to be assembled and disassembled many times.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would think that the details on how the parts that are being used would have to play a part in the strength and durability of this portable, since it's going to be taken up and put down many times, so it has to, so to speak, has to stand the test of time.
Right. No, that's a very good point that you're making. And the metals, the different metals that are being used attest to that. And acacia wood attests to that. And if you take care of linen and wool and other fabrics, they will be durable to a point. Okay. Mothballs hadn't been invented yet. So there had to be maintenance and everything. It's a tremendous process. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I'm very interested in words, and I'm checking now the source of the word tabernacle, and it comes from Latin. That means you laugh. Taverna, which is a tavern,
Table.
but also hut, H-U-T. And then
Ah.
it goes in tabernaculum, that it's a tent. And in Middle English, it went to what we're using now. But it is a place, and so the word tabernacle does not include a place of prayers. The word includes a place. So that's interesting, but that's a place of gathering that everyone comes to. And what else? And I'm going, Michael, to check the word temple, where it comes from. Now, when we say temple, is the building in Jerusalem that Solomon built. Okay, so that's the word translated temple.
Right.
And we don't call it Mishkan. We call it Beit, house, Beit Amikdash, the house of holiness. Now, another thing that I would like to share with you is that at this time, you have the ark with the commandments in an ark, in a box inside the tent. When we go to Beit HaMikdash, you're going to also have that. But today in the synagogues, in the shul, the piece of holiness is what?
Torah.
Torah, the scrolls. That's the holiest part of the shul. So there is a focus that everyone goes into. So we have tabernacle is what they built in the desert, and Beit HaMikdash is the temple that they're building in, you call it the land of milk and honey. I just laugh at it because these days I don't feel the milk or the honey, but that's a different story.
That's good. Well, that's a good discussion. Everybody brought something important into the discussion here. And again, thank you, Grace, for getting it started. Any other comments? Yes, Grace.
I just wanted to thank Don because he brought together the engineering of it and made some comments early on about the rods and the electricity and, you know, that piece of it, because you know, I like walking Labyrinth. It's very interesting, very spiritual. And the most spiritual one, well, two of the most, one is in Wyoming, up in Casper along the river where the water flows, and it's amazing. It's right on the edge. It's very close to the river, and it was all hand carved with wooden posts around it, and they built, you know, it out of natural things. They use rocks and wood, and it's just the craftsmanship behind it is totally amazing, just amazing. And it really struck me about the energy with the poles and the copper and
Origin
the whole
of the
right
world, temple.
There's a
Check out these
good
pictures.
phrase. Yeah, I don't have any pictures of what we're speaking of. I just have only the written word in my Torah. So, but other places, Marty mentioned earlier about having gone and seen, you know, the Yellowstone and the redwoods. He used the sequoias and the redwoods. I've been to both of those places. Lovely, wonderful, beautiful. I spent a lot of time in the sequoias, and I've only been to Yellowstone twice, and just very amazing that, you know, he would tie in. Thank you for that. You tied in the engineering of the people of that time, that there was a purpose behind the way they engineered it.
Mhm.
So that wherever they set up this temple while they're roaming the desert, right? We're roaming the desert. We just become free and we're roaming the desert, and that it's going to bring God's energy into it. Speaking technically, I found that very fascinating. Thank you, Don, for that. That's all I wanted to say.
Go ahead, Don, and we'll finish up here.
Just answered, Grace. Thank you very much. Are you in Green Valley right now, Grace?
I am, yes, until the 15th of April.
Last night I had dinner with my good friend Lenny Friedman, who until recently was a member of the temple. And Lenny is a labyrinth master. He builds them all over the country. He's got several in Green Valley you might want to visit. One in Desert Meadows Park, and another one right next to the temple, if I recall. So if you're into labyrinths, he's the guy to see. Anyway, that's
Thank you. I visited 3 thus far, one at the temple. There's one over at La Posada. That's amazing. Very nice. And there's one at the Episcopalian Church, I believe. I'm not sure of the name of the church. Forgive me. But yes, all of them. And I have a little brochure that talks about how to make that a spiritual way and what it means. It's very nice, very nice. I didn't realize he was an engineer of that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
sure.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, let's move on. David, would you continue with the reading then?
Where are we on 35 now?
We are on 35.
Just wanted to check.
I think 35, 31.
Okay, factor 31, okay. And he
Yeah.
made bars, of acacia wood, 5 for the boards of one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the tabernacle for the hinder part westward. And he made the middle bar to pass through in the midst of the boards from the one end to the other. And he overlaid the boards with gold and made their rings of gold for holders for the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. And he made the veil of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twisted linen. With the cherubim, the work of the skillful workman made he it. And he made thereunto 4 pillars of acacia, and overlaid them with gold, their hooks being of gold, and he cast for them 4 sockets of silver. And he made a screen for the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet, and 5 fine twined linen. The work of the weaver, in colors, and the 5 pillars of it with their hooks, for he overlaid their capitals and their fillets with gold, and their 5 sockets were of brass. Do you want me to continue? We're into chapter 37 if you want me to go on.
Okay. We can stop here. Any comments about this? Well, there was something that struck. Okay, Amy first.
Gold is a very soft metal.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that there would need to be an alloy or something mixed with it in order to give it strength.
It usually is, yes.
But that isn't mentioned.
It isn't mentioned. That's right. It gives you the impression that it was pure gold, pure silver. Okay, They don't say anything about, although maybe they took the liberty of just saying gold and silver as opposed to mixing it with something else to make it a little more durable. Doesn't say. So I'm going to take it. So some people will take it at face value, but if something's going to be used over a long period of time, things get bent and so forth. So you want it to be a little more durable. Maybe they did mix it with other things. I do not know. It doesn't say.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael.
And well, today you have a 10 carat, 14 carat, 18 carat, and then 24 carat.
Mm-hmm. And red gold. Okay. And yellow gold.
White gold.
White gold. So, and those are the different those are other elements that are mixed in
Yeah.
to for certain reasons to modify the
Strength.
the alloy. That's right. To strengthen it. So it's just take your pick. But it's a good question, Amy. Any other ideas? So we can, for the time being, we'll just go with traditional. It's pure gold, pure silver, and everything, because they understood metallurgy, and because to make brass or bronze or things like that, it's combinations of the different elements. So they already understood all that. So I just don't know. Any other comments?
Yeah, oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, Rabbi Mary. But one of the things that that I noticed is that when they talk about gold, they very often refer to overlaying with gold.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the gold is overlaying might be what is giving it strength.
Okay. Yes, it would be. That's true. Very good, David. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I would like for us to pay attention to verse 35, to the second part of it, or to the last few words of it.
Okay.
He made it with a woven design of
cherubim.
Of cherubs. And that's something for us to hold in mind because it's coming up much louder. So we're talking about a design with a figure. So it's not plain lines and so forth. Here we meet the woven like something that we have in your clothing or something. It's woven with a shape of something. And that's the word cherub, in which we are stuck not knowing what it means.
Okay. Interesting. I was looking at it from another standpoint. And what colors have been represented here so far?
Bright colors of, isn't it blues and crimsons and purples and blues and what else? I'm at a loss because
Look at
almost
35.
colorblind.
Grace, on 35, on verse 35, you have all the colors mentioned.
Blue, purple, crimson. Okay, red. What are we talking about here?
Lively colors, optimistic.
Lively colors.
They're very bright and very,
Don, what's
okay,
Don, what's the physics of color?
Physics of color, it's the electromagnetic radiation in different wavelengths that the brain registers as color when the rays hit our retinas, to be technical.
Okay. What is the hottest color in
Violet.
physics?
Violet and above.
Right. And blue and violet. Okay. And what are the cooler?
Cooler colors.
Gray and black.
Well,
Red.
red is
Red,
is
red,
the
really?
infrared is a heat color, but it is also low energy.
Low energy. That's right. So when you look at it from the standpoint of the physics, but what are we talking about here when we talk about the different wavelengths of light? How can we see the different waves?
Marty, I have a different question to the one you posed for Don. When many years after that, and still in Buckingham Palace, there is a woman that's dressed in those colors. And those were the colors that royalty dressed with. And the cardinals and our Kohen Gadol and our high priest. So these colors continued to be very important, very royal, very.
Okay.
Yeah,
But what am I getting after, Don?
Well, I think I'm going down the wrong rabbit hole here because
No. You were saying the right words, Don.
okay,
The
but these
different
colors,
wavelengths of light. Put them all together. What do you have?
but these purple colors were dyes that were very scarce because they were obtained
Yes.
from crustaceans and very scarce resources at that time. So it's a combination of the different energies and also how hard the dyes were to get, I think. I don't know how to really answer that.
What I was getting to is the spectrum,
Oh, okay, yeah.
because they're representing the different colors. And when copper changes color, what are the different colors that you see in copper?
Green.
Green and different shades of green, maybe some tan, things like that. Okay. So
Question.
everything is in a spectrum of light, and no, it's not the rays of light that are going to create an electric charge, but it's a spectrum. Where else do we see a spectrum? Yes, Amy,
Rainbow
you got it. And what
and
was
God's
the meaning?
covenant to us.
Yes. And what is what does the rainbow also represent? It's the covenant, but what else?
Do you want to know what the covenant is?
If this is going to
or
be
are
a
you going in
place
a
of worship, and it's representing the covenant, but what else? When we talk
Peace.
of, who said that? Who said peace? Peace. And you
Yeah.
put it all together. Okay. And now you see this whole, so I'm just coming at it from another angle, because they're creating a spectrum of light. It's representative. It could have been representative of the rainbow from the Noah story, that it's a sanctuary. That's what we call it. Anyway, yes, Grace, your hand was up.
Well, I think you just answered my question and lowered that hand there. I was thinking, I was on the maybe a little more scientific side, where looking at all the colors, could they be representing a conduit? So we know that this is a meeting place of tent, so that God will be there with us. And the rays of colors and all the different hues that we're talking about, as a new word for me, the hue, or this hue and that hue, where there could they be a conduit of the energy of God and his spirit by representing, the gold, the copper.
Yeah.
And then my question really is that because when my skin wears copper, like copper jewelry and things of that nature, I get that green hue, that green.
Okay.
It bleeds green. What does that mean? What does that mean for medically? So that's kind of a medical question.
Well, you can see it
maybe at
with-
another time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can see that color change in people who ingest too much zinc.
Zinc.
Zinc,
Really?
and it can
Ah.
give them that greenish color all over. Copper can do it too.
What kind of food has zinc in it?
I'd have to look that up.
Okay.
But there are people who take
Zinc tablets.
tablets of zinc that contain zinc.
Huh.
And you have to be careful with the amounts and like that. But anyway, it's good point. Yes, Michael.
Also, just like to add this, that color also plays a big part in diamonds.
Oh, yes.
You have blue and blue white, and also one of the most expensive diamonds that throw a yellow tint is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yellow diamonds.
All those are due to other elements in, that in the carbon, in the process of the carbon that's being heated to extremely high temperatures and pressure to form the carbon. There are other elements that are mixed in with it. Yes, and that's how that comes about. That also holds for sapphire, corundum. You have sapphire and ruby. They're basically the same, but formed under slightly different conditions and have one different element in their component parts. But it's very interesting. Very good point, Michael. However, I thought Michael was going to address wavelengths and music. Each note has its own wavelength
Sound,
and sound.
sound.
And so I thought that was going to happen. And that's why people enjoy singing prayers. It also gives them that resonant tone. Okay, so it's not just light that resonates with us, it's also sound.
Sound.
Okay, and deep bass, it causes the floor to vibrate and the walls to vibrate, so you feel it. So you put it, and when people are singing together, that's going to create the necessary harmonics for that to happen. And that happens in theaters, that happens in coliseums, it happens in churches and synagogues and other temples around the world. So it's a very interesting effect. So I just wanted to point that out, that we're using all of our senses here. It's not just what we're putting something together. It's bringing us together also as a whole. Okay, so it's a community, it's us as an individual. It works in many, many different ways. So it's a very interesting series of concepts here. And it sort of jumped our gun. This is one of the discussions I was going to drag in later, but since it was brought up, I figured we might as well discuss it. Thank you, everyone. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The very end of the last verse, I believe it's 38. But the 5 sockets were of copper.
Right.
The copper sockets. Is that what do you call it? Metallurgical for producing some kind of energy or stability? I'm not sure.
Well, it's
Am I
good at
making sense?
conductivity. Copper wires,
And
so
this was the year like how long ago are we speaking of this time frame? Please remind me. Over 5,000 years, 2,000, 3,000,
Mm-hmm.
give or take? Is that correct?
2,500.
25,
2,500 years?
Yeah.
give or
Okay.
take, give or take. Go ahead,
Give or,
Don.
right, it's a guesstimate.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation, Grace, because all the other sockets were silver and all of a sudden we have copper or brass introduced. And conduct electrically, there's not a lot of difference between how well they conduct, but I don't know if we're going to find out where this is going in the next chapter.
No, but we will, as we read along, we will come across other things, how the metals are used for mirrors in the temple. We'll come across that too. Okay. Any other comments here? Well, let's go on, and David, if you would kindly read, we're now in chapter 37, verse 1.
Okay,
And why don't you read all the way through the end of 16?
okay. Here goes, deep breath. And Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood. 2 cubits and a half was the length of it, and 1.5 cubits was the breadth of it, and 1.5 cubits the height of it. And he overlaid it with pure gold within and without, and made a crown of gold to it round about. And he cast it for it 4 rings of gold in the 4 feet thereof, even 2 rings on the one side of it, and 2 rings on the other side of it. And he made staves of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he put the staves into the rings on the sides of the ark, to bear the ark. And he made the ark cover of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half was the length thereof, and 1.5 cubits the breadth thereof. And he made 2 cherubim of gold. Of beaten work made he them. Of the 2 ends of the ark cover, 1 cherub at the one end, and 1 cherub at the other end. Of one piece was the ark cover made he, the cherubim, at the 2 ends thereof. And the cherubim spread out their wings on high, screening the ark cover with their wings, and their faces one to another towards the ark cover with the faces of the cherubim. And he made the table of, guess what, acacia wood. 2 cubits were the length thereof, and 1 cubit the breadth thereof, and 1.5 cubits the height thereof. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and he made thereto a crown of gold about. And he made unto it a border of a handbreadth round about, and made a golden crown to the border thereof round about. And he cast for it 4 rings of gold, and he put the rings in the 4 corners that were on the 4 feet thereof. Close by the border were the rings, the holders for the staves to bear the table. And he made the staves of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold to bear the table. And he made the vessels which were upon the table, the dishes thereof, and the pans thereof, and the bowls thereof, and the jars thereof, wherewith to pour out of pure gold.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes. Hi, Suzanne. You're muted.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Oh, you're not. Okay, you just changed it. Okay.
You got to be quick. Anyways, I in listening to the reading here, mine follows everything word for word except for one point, and I don't know what to make of it. In my translation, it mentions the mercy seat in several of the verses, and I'm wondering if that's in any other translations.
The
Well,
what?
can you repeat what it mentioned?
What?
Mercy seat.
No.
Mercy? Where,
Yes.
in what verse?
Well, let's see. It was in a couple three. Let's see where it was first mentioned. Okay, in verse 6, and he made the mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half was the length thereof, 1 cubit and a half the breadth thereof. And then also in verse 7, he made 2 cherubims of gold, beaten out of 1 piece, made he them on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. And also in verse 8 and also in verse 9. So I'm just wondering, but you don't have that in any of your translations, is that correct?
Correct. Are they using mercy as a synonym for cherubim?
No,
No.
cherub.
But maybe what the cherubim are doing, in many of the images, the wings are folded in a downward thrust, pointing to the pointing inside the rectangle of the ark, over the ark.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's relating to that. I don't know. Yes, Don.
Yeah, the mercy seat, I think in the original Torah description is actually the sacrificial platform that sits right under the tips of the outstretched wings. So it's where the offering was placed. So on this small platform would.
Thank you. Got it. So it would be above the ark itself.
Yeah.
It'd be on the surface with the wings of the cherubim pointing into that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I have never heard that.
Okay,
before.
let's go to this, what you call cherubim, and in Hebrew is keruvim. Keruvim. Is that? You know, we were told not, we are not going to have any statues and pictures and on the Holy of the Holies. What's going on? And I don't have an answer.
Well, they have wings. No, they have
So
wings.
what?
Are they angels?
So what?
Are they representative of angels?
Well, and nowhere it
doesn't
represents
say.
angels with wings. It's 2 figures that are like that with wings that are facing each other. There is a little hole between them. I'll put it there. You can see it on Google. And it's a figure very close to when they depict it in pictures like a bird. You wanted the wings to be angels, fine, I don't have a problem. I'm just very, very puzzled by that issue.
Okay, Don and then Amy.
Yeah, I studied this for years. And coming back to electricity, we know that the ark is completely covered with gold, which is super conductive, the most conductive material we know. And the structure of the ark with these 2 wings with an air gap between them, positioned over a small table, would turn them into a capacitor, excuse the technical term for a second, so that during any electrical storm, it would act, you see a big spark shoot across from one wing tip to the other, right through whatever is sitting on the sacrificial table. So it's kind of like a Weber barbecue that's powered by electrical storms. And it would work, at least how it's described here. But then this, of course, this is totally my speculation. So don't give it any credibility, but that's how I picture it anyway.
It's
So why didn't
interesting.
they put just a little piece of gold there with a, just two little golds or two little hoops? But we're talking about two little statues.
But you need the space to have the spark.
Right, but you can put two boxes with a little
You could do
space.
anything. You could use a Van de Graaff generator and you just have two
Right.
metal
But this
walls
is a
facing each
sculpture.
other. That's right. That's right. But I don't know.
Is it
I don't
maybe,
know either.
what about it if the cherubim are to represent children or something what's more beautiful than a baby? What's more beautiful than a child? An infant. What's more, nothing. I can't think of, a child. That's what I see in it. I don't know. What is more beautiful than a child, a baby, and then put wings on it to give them wings to fly into hope, fly into the future, to lift them above, because the words in here are above, right? Above the art. So that's kind of my perspective, and everyone has shared some incredible things to consider. That's just where my head and heart are going for this.
Well, we'll imagine cupids.
What's the meaning of the word
Okay.
cherubim?
Amy, you've been very patient with us.
This is for Mary, and she just stated my question. What is the meaning in Hebrew? How does that translate?
Right.
And in the Jewish tradition,
Here is your translation. Condition of Caribbean.
what does
The region of the
cherubim
Caribbean Sea, its island,
mean or symbolize?
including the West Indies and the surrounding coasts.
Okay, I think we have an answer.
No, the very funny thing, and I hope you get it. When I arrived in Israel, I didn't know much Hebrew, of course, and we were studying this chapter, and the word kerubim, kruvim, appeared. And the only meaning I knew about kruvim was cabbage, which is the same word, but with different vowels. So I said, what? Two cabbages sitting on the bed. So I didn't know. I need to look at it again. But as I'm leaving, it always puzzled me because of the issue of being a representative, as something, a statue, a sculpture. And, in the movie, The Lost Ark of the whatever, they didn't show that. They show a plain box. I don't know. I really don't know. But it's a good question, Amy. I'm going to research the Hebrew of that. I have not done that.
You have, and you have enough time for another week or two, because the word will come up again and again. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Suzanne, please.
We have to remember that when Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden, that God put, I forget if he put one cherub or if he put more than one, which would be cherubim, in the garden to prevent anyone or anything from entering. So I'm not, to me, there must be some connection between God using cherubim to protect the garden and cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know what it is, but I think there has to be a connection.
I don't remember, I just don't remember anything about cherubim in the Hebrew version of the Garden of
Krovim,
Eden.
it says cherubim. It
It
says
does?
krovim.
Okay,
Yeah, but not CH, but krovim.
okay, thank you. Thank you for educating me on that. Thank you, both of you.
Well, according to my dictionary here, what they say is that Kruv is an angel. In Hebrew, the angel word malach is a shaliach, is a messenger. And they repeat that it was that, and that's it. So if you want, it can be two angels or messengers. My concern is a little different, but that's what the translation in the Hebrew dictionary.
Okay. All right.
We need to send this question to Rabbi Norman. Maybe he has some insight into it.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, why don't we read on? If somebody has another translation that they want to read from, that would be okay. If we want to give David a rest, but why don't we only have, if we go verses, it's a quick one, verses 17 through 29. Okay, David. You're
Okay,
on.
here goes. And he made the candlestick, and I'm sorry about the translation, but let me just tell you that my version is according to the Masoretic text, with the aid of these versions and with constant consultation of Jewish authorities. So this is all you, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, here we go. And he made the candlestick of pure gold. Of beaten work made he the candlestick, even its base, and its shaft, its cups, its knops, and its flowers were of one piece with it. And there were 6 branches going out of the sides thereof, 3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side thereof, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side thereof. 3 cups made like almond blossoms in one branch, a knop and a flower, and 3 cups made like almond blossoms on the other branch, a knop and a flower. So for the 6 branches going out, of the candlestick. And in the candlestick were 4 cups made like almond blossoms, the knops thereof, and the flowers thereof, and a knop under the 2 branches of one piece with it, and a knop under the 2 branches of one piece with it, and a knop under 2 branches of one piece with it, for the 6 branches going out of it. Their knops and their branches were of one piece with it. The whole of it was one beaten work of pure gold. And he made the lamps thereof 7, and the tongues thereof, and the snuff dishes thereof of pure gold. Of a talent of pure gold made he it, and all the vessels thereof. And he made the altar of incense of acacia wood. I think they'd be running out of acacia wood if they did it here.
That's why there were no more forests. That's why they have plant trees.
Okay, okay. Cubit was the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof, 4 square, and 2 cubits was the height thereof. The horns thereof were of one piece with it. And he overlaid it with pure gold, the top thereof and the sides thereof round about, and the horns of it. And he made unto it a crown of gold round about. And he made for it 2 golden rings under the crown thereof, upon the 2 ribs thereof, and upon the 2 sides of it, for holders for staves wherewith to bear it. And he made the staves of acacia wood. I only have 2 acacia trees in our yard, so I'm sure now. And he made 2 staves of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. And he made the holy anointing oil and the pure incense of sweet spices after the art of the perfumer.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for stopping me.
But it's amazing. Yes, all the acacia wood that's being used. But think about it, the knowledge one person had to have in how to make the necessary combinations of chemicals necessary to do all of this. It's a tremendous responsibility, and also not only being aware of the metallurgy, but also the gemstones. We haven't gotten to that yet, but it will come up. And also, for the ephod, and also here the perfumes and incense. That's a tremendous amount of knowledge of chemistry. So it had to be a massive group of people to do all of this.
And one thing that I wanted to just add is that one of the big things I've gotten out of Torah study is the constant use of acacia wood. And the 2 acacia trees near my home have become the most precious trees in my whole garden.
Very good. Thank you.
You have to cover them with gold, though. Remember that?
That's cute. That's
Thank
cute.
you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
That's going to be a task. Okay, Donna, yes, you have your hand
Let
up.
us look at the last word of the verse that David read. The last 2 words. What translations do you have?
Expertly blended.
That's that. Okay. Anyone else?
There may be another, because you're bringing it up for a reason. The Hebrew may say something different.
Well, in the Orthodox Bible, Torah, it says perfumers handout. So we're talking about an expert person that does that. Friedman calls it ointment maker. So we have here a couple of things, and what it's interesting to me is I don't know, and that's why the translations are different. The word in Hebrew is rokeach, and it was taken for the modern Hebrew as a pharmacist. Rokeach, Beit Merkachat is the house of this. So it's a place in which you make perfumes, you make ointments, and so forth. So in modern Hebrew, they took it for that. And I cannot tell you if it's a perfume maker or ointment maker, but all of the above will work.
Okay, thank you. Grace had her hand up for a bit, and then Don.
Yeah, I was, as we were
And then, excuse me, Suzanne, I don't know, I don't want to overlook you. Did you have, I don't know who had their hand up first.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, we all had our hand up. so-
Okay, okay.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I think I was last. Go ahead.
Oh, I just
okay.
wanted to say, my version says work of the apothecary, which fits in with what Rabbi Mary said.
What is your, Suzanne? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Oh, Mine says work of the apothecary.
Exactly, exactly. Another one, which is, yeah, a pharmacist, yes.
Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Grace, so should I let Don go first, Grace, or you, I don't know.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Grace.
please.
Go.
Okay,
Okay.
well, thank you, Don. Thank you. That's very kind. Chivalry is not dead. Yes. Anyway, I was thinking while listening to it, because I'm trying to have a little nourishment, I was getting a chemistry lesson, and so then now we're talking about apothecary and the many different words that are used. And that's all. I was recognizing this as a type of chemistry where, or a pharmacist, because back in the day, pharmacists mixed our medications, right? They're
Mhm.
in the lab to prescribe to us. So I was really looking at this reading as it's chemistry to me
It
in
is,
that sense. That's all I want to say.
it is. Don, I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
what you're going to say. You're welcome. Thank you. Don, I'm not sure what you're going to say about if it's dealing with chemistry, alchemy, or anything like that.
No, nothing like that.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just going to remark on the unprecedented level of detail in this description of the entire. I mean, there's nothing like it yet in the Torah. Pages and pages of fine detail, and the fact that this was written, David was reading from the Mizrahic text, which was written after the first temple was destroyed. So this level of description is enough almost to reconstruct the ark and the tabernacle. But those items had already gone AWOL. They were gone when the temple was destroyed. So I'm just wondering whether part of the purpose of this description is to hope somebody gets out there, starts growing acacia trees and to make a new set.
But as we pointed out, hidden in this are some things that we don't know what they meant. Tachash, we do not know what that animal was.
But Marty, let me say, today, even in Judaism, in our tradition, on the Havdalah, on the what you call a Havdalah,
Mhm.
on Shabbat night when the Shabbat leaves, we have light, and we have taste, and we have smell.
Yes.
We use most of the senses. Here too, in the tabernacle, you mentioned, Marty, that we had the seeing, the hearing, and now we have the smelling to have an entire experience. And since we are less than a week from Passover, from Pesach, during the Seder, we do the same thing. We
That's right.
taste, we smell, we eat, and we touch things. And it's because we are teaching the kids, and kids learn through all the senses. So you are right, Dawn. These are the details. And in churches, we have the incense going and the smell still appearing. And anyway.
No, it's very true. It's very true. Amy.
The thing that I just cannot get over about the building of the tabernacle is that it drew on the gifts that God gave everyone in the group. So it involved the weavers and the chemists and all of the range of skills. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that it prevailed upon the entire community to participate and put their hand and their gift in the construction.
Mhm.
Very well stated. Yes, Grace. You had your hand up, Grace.
Sorry, I forgot to lower it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, one of the things, Rabbi Sachs, I've mentioned him before. He has a piece about this very subject that we're on called that it's in the details. Okay, and he weaves into his commentary on this that it as you very well stated, and we've been talking about a community. It takes a lot of different people with different talents to be able to make any community, whether you want to call it a religious community, a working township, whatever. It takes people with knowledge of in so many different ways. And
Like this group.
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And it's important to remember, because that means everyone is important here. It's not just one person. Bezalel is the foreman, but if you will, or the manager, but it requires a tremendous team of people to do this. And without one, you don't get the right end. Something isn't being made. So it's a very important concept. So we've covered this very well. Any other comments that people want to make so far? But it's a very important. These are very important things. Okay, well, let's read on, because now I had mentioned this, that we're going to get to it today. Surprise. If David, would you continue reading? Let's go through, well, it's a long one.
Oh dear.
But why don't you read 8 through 15?
Alrighty. 8. And he made, and this is 38:8 or
I'm wrong. We still,
I'm wrong.
wait a minute. Now we're on verse 1, 38:1. I'm sorry. Go
Okay.
1 through 15.
Okay. 38. Here we go. And he made the altar a burnt offering of, guess what? Acacia wood. I'm gonna have
It's
to find
durable.
another
We went
acacia
over that,
tree.
but it's very durable.
5 cubits was the length thereof, and 5 cubits the breadth thereof, 4 square, and 3 cubits the height thereof. And he made the horns thereof upon the 4 corners of it. The forms thereof were of one piece with it, and he overlaid it with brass. And he made all the vessels of the altar, the pots and the shovels and the basins, the flesh hooks and the fire pans. All the vessels thereof made he of brass. And he made for the altar a grating of network of brass under the ledge, rounded beneath, reaching halfway up. And he cast 4 rings for the 4 ends of the gratings of brass to be holders of the staves. And he made the staves out of acacia wood and overlaid them with, here comes brass. And he put the staves into the rings on the sides of the altar, wherewith to bear it, he made it hollow with planks. And he made the laver of brass, and the base thereof of brass, and the mirrors of the serving women that did service at the door of the tent of meeting. And he made the court. For the south side southward, the hangings of the court were of fine-twined linen, 100 cubits. Their pillars were 20, and their sockets 20 of brass. The hooks of the pillars and the fillets were of silver. And for the north side, 100 cubits, their pillars 20, and their sockets 20 of brass. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the west side were hangings of 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10, and the hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the far east side of eastward 50 cubits. The hangings for the one side of the gate were 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. Final verse, and so for the other side, on this hand and that hand, by the gate of the court, were the hangings of 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3.
Okay. We'll let you take a deep breath. Any comments about this? Did anything pop out at anyone? So, yes, Don. Don, you're muted.
Sorry.
It's okay.
A question, again, historically, because as I said, as far as I know, this was written after the diaspora from Babylon. And so I'm sure everybody had in mind that they were to get back to the ability to conduct sacrifices again once more, get back together with the new temple. And so when the Persian ruler Cyrus finally let the Israelites come back to Babylon and rebuild the temple, were these instructions followed? Was a new ark and tabernacle constructed from these instructions, or how did they do sacrifices once they all came back and built the second temple?
Why don't you ask about the first one?
Or okay, I'll go with yeah. Well, no, the first temple, as I understood it, that they were still using the ark and tabernacle that were constructed during the Exodus, as I understood.
Yeah, but so those that came to build the first temple had a map or instructions, or everything was oral.
Well, they had the actual objects from the first temple. They had the ones we're reading about right now. They still existed, but they were destroyed when they kicked out when the temple was destroyed. So were the ark and the tabernacle. So my question is, when the second temple was built, did they use this as a template?
Okay, so you assume that the tent of meeting was carried through Jordan and it was put as a model to build the temple.
Well, not the whole temple, but at least they used the ark and tabernacle that they carried.
Yeah, okay. So you assume that they took it. I don't know. I'm just asking. The thing is that Solomon comes many years after they arrived in the promised land. So, I hope that they had just like they had the Torah and they had the commandments, that this also was passed, because as I said, it was oral. But this is a good question. How did they do? I highly recommend, Dawn, especially for you, the book by Elliot Friedman called Who Wrote the Bible? Because he claims that those instructions actually are exactly what happened later on in the temple. So it's a very interesting let's call it theory or not.
I have that
That's a
book.
good question.
I do have that book, but I didn't quite answer the question that I had.
Well, they say he talks about the rebuilding, that those measurements and so forth were replicated in the temple. And I don't know what happened with the second temple. Maybe there were people that still remember. Since it passed, the Babylonians were very, very wise, studious persons, and they might have written, at that time they already have written stuff, and they could read. So maybe it's a good question. I don't know how they carry and emulated that. And for the second temple, is easier for me to understand what happened. But for the first, I think it was because also many years have passed since they entered until they built. So it's a very good question because, you don't have notes or maps. So how they did it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Question, and so we don't really know. One thing I would like to mention is when we read here about the menorah, and you see that the menorah has 7 sticks, 7 branches.
Yes.
Okay, so this is not the Chanukiah. The Chanukiah has 9. So the 7 come from here. And we read that it's made of pure gold, inside, outside, and so forth. So no wonder that the Romans, when they came, they took it. They took everything that was gold, 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 and this was one of massive pieces of gold that they took, and then we see it in the archaeological sites in Rome. So here you can see all the things that they can do. And your question, Dawn, it's a good question. I don't have an answer. I don't.
Okay, Amy.
I have a question for Mary. When the temple was destroyed, what happened to the Ark of the Covenant? Was it stolen or was it destroyed?
That's a good question because, what's his name? In the Temple of the Ark, what's his name of the movie?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. It seems like
Jones.
they saw that it was buried somewhere, and and that's what they want to find out. I don't know if they took it or not. I don't even know if it was in the second temple. I don't. I need to look at it and learn about it. But it's a good question. Very.
When I was in Ethiopia,
Yeah.
there is a congregation there that claims ownership.
Yes.
And it's highly protective, and nobody can go in and view it, but they claim ownership, possession of the Ark.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what Harrison Ford was looking
I
for.
know.
That's right.
And it was fascinating, wasn't it?
Yes.
David has had his hand up for a very, very long time.
That's okay, but as I was reading all of the readings that I've done today, I think Rabbi Miri might be interested in this. I was really taken and impressed by the style, the writing style that whoever wrote this was using. It is not a style that would be in use today. If you wrote a newspaper article in this style, you'd be fired on the spot. But the attention to detail and the repetition of the words makes it so clear as to exactly what to do. I believe that I could use these instructions and build exactly what they wanted me to build.
Yes.
When I went out and bought a shed There was no way I could read the instructions and build that shed. I just had to redesign it myself. But these words are so specially written with the repetition and the clarity. I really wanted to point that out. It was really quite beautiful to me.
Okay, I want to
Yeah, no,
change the
you're
subject.
absolutely
I want to
right.
change the subject for a second because otherwise we're going to have to do all of this next week for this. Okay. And I know there are other comments, and if we want to go over time, that's okay as far as I'm concerned. But I want to get back to two very, very interesting aspects to this. Why is the almond branch? Why are the almond branches, the almond flowers in very specific detail? That is a very important thing that we can't overlook. Okay, first Suzanne, and then Amy.
I think it's because that relates to Aaron when it was
Very good.
whether he was really the high priest, and his rod grew into like an almond. Well, it can't not
Mhm.
a tree.
Yes, it blooms. It blossoms
blooms.
into
Into
it changes.
almonds. Yes.
That's right. That's right. Very good. That's one. Amy, you had your hand up.
Well, I don't know if this is significant or not, but the almond is it's a symbol of Jordan. And when people marry in the country of Jordan, the man presents his fiance with a gold necklace with an almond hanging from it, rather than an engagement ring. This is their
Okay.
tradition. And that's the first thought that came to mind.
Well, what is that symbolic of?
Be fruitful and multiply, maybe.
Well, possibly. But what is the first sign that winter is over?
Yeah. Askedia porachat. We have a song about it, that the almond is
That's right.
blooming, and spring is, and Pesach is coming.
That's right. It's the first flowering tree heralding the spring.
Oh, okay.
So now
New
I'm going
birth.
to ask you, Marty, I'm going to ask all of us, all of you who believe that all this story was real. Where are almond trees in the desert?
Don't find them there.
So there is an anachronistic stuff that mixes here between what happened in the land of Canaan and what happens here. I don't mind it. As I said, this is my story, and I don't mind that there are,
That's right. It's the story. It's not the story that's important. It is what the story represents, and that's what we had discussed before, because many times there are hidden messages, and it's up to us to try to get into the minds of the people who wrote this. And the almond is a symbol of fertility, okay, for new birth, new generation. And it fits into the entire concept of the Exodus story. Once this is all completed, it's a new birth. The Israelites are going to be coming together in a new direction. They are now a people. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Suzanne, please.
maybe I'm naive, I don't know, but I believe every word of the Bible. To me, we have two choices. Either the whole thing is true or it's not. I don't think we can pick and choose what's true and what isn't. I mean, but that's how I feel about it.
The
It's
problem
all true.
lies is, the problem is that there, and we've discussed this before also. Was it all given at once? Are there different in God-inspired authors? And you can go to different sources for the entire spectrum from one to the other.
Oh, I believe there are different authors.
Yeah.
Also,
And
believe
so,
that Moses wrote the first 5 books. I do believe that.
and that's okay. And that's what the orthodoxy would say too. But we also know that there are other parts of Judaism that will think otherwise, because they, like Rabbi Friedman and others, that they contribute, there are different authors that contributed to this over a period of time. I'm not smart enough to know which is so, other than saying that I know there's a spectrum of thought here. That's all. And that, you take your pick. You take your pick, and whatever you decide is good enough for anyone. Okay. So but it's an interesting point that you make, and this debate comes up constantly because of different types of ways of looking at the Jewish experience, if you will. Anyway, that was one thing I wanted to bring up. There's another, and that is in verse 8, the mirrors of the women. It says he made the laver of copper and its stand of copper or brass, whatever you want to say, from the mirrors of the women who perform tasks at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Any comments about that? This is the first time I heard about this, that there were women that
What
were going
verse
to
is
be at the
this?
entrance, and they had,
And 8,
yeah,
8?
38:8.
Thank you.
Can I read something that was written by Rabbi Plow?
Please.
Okay, the introduction of this information is obscure. So I felt relief seeing that he started with that, especially the words who perform tasks. What tasks? The Hebrew does not actually use the term women explicitly. The translation is derived from the feminine form of, Mary, can you help me? Marot?
Atzovot. Atzovot.
Yes.
Atzovot.
Okay. And
Ot is feminine. Yeah.
it's in the feminine term,
Yes.
which
Yes.
some people render as women arrayed for a sacred task of some sort. However, in a book that we usually do not read in Torah study, in Samuel 2, verse 22, it is reported that the priest Eli's sons acquired a bad reputation by sleeping with women who perform tasks. The task of these women is illuminated by an ancient Near Eastern brick inscription of, now I may pronounce this incorrectly, Teptehar of Susa. It tells of 4 women as guards at the sanctuary whose task it also was to pray at the foot of certain statues. Mirrors were probably made of burnished copper and were fairly precious. Hence, they represented an extra offering. Well, the copper, certain things are hard to find. They're not found on the surface of the earth, and you'd have to do it with mining and everything else.
When you shine it,
And it's
when you
shiny.
shine copper.
And they used to
yeah.
use that as mirrors in ancient times. Yes, Amy.
Why would anybody in a temple be praying to statues when we are?
Well, no, that's another religion. That's another group of people to show a similarity. That's all. It's not.
Okay, it's
based
not
on that.
in the
Right,
Jewish temple that
right,
they were doing that. Okay,
right.
thank you.
So but nobody knows. But your question, why is this inserted here? It's the first time that there's any mention. Maybe women were also doing a lot for the temple, the construction of the temple, and maybe that's why it was added here. I don't know. Nobody seems to see the actual relationship.
Well,
But
we
it's good
still
that you
have
raised the question.
Yeah,
a religion today that does that, prays to statues. So I
Yes.
wonder if it had its origins clear back to that time.
I don't know.
But not in our tradition.
That's
You're
right,
right.
not
In
in-
other
that's right.
traditions, absolutely.
So, it jumped out at me because it has, I mean, you can take this in many, many different directions. And and that's all I'm going to say, but it's jumps out off the page because it doesn't seem to fit into the story that well.
Right.
So I don't know if anyone else, Donna, do you have any idea since you've studied the metals and everything else?
No.
No. So I just don't know. I have to go by what Rabbi Plout has said about this. That's all I know. Any other comments about this? Michael, I'm glad you're back. I interrupted you. We do have, well, we're over time anyway. Why don't you go ahead and bring to fore? I think your hand had been up and someone else's hand when I interrupted. So, Michael, you're on, and we can go back to what you wanted to talk about. You're muted, Mike.
Good, Michael.
Yeah, in the Vatican, there are Jewish or Hebrew artifacts, I believe.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I think there's a possibility that the Ark of the Covenant can be there. I mean,
That is a theory.
yeah,
That is a theory. Yes.
since who claims they have it? Who is that claim they do have it?
In Ethiopia, they have.
Ethiopians, yeah.
That's
But
right.
you're not allowed to see it. You can't. So
Right.
that gives me pause to think that that might not quite be true.
Okay. Was Don, did you want to address that or some other
Yeah,
things?
well, I did real quick. I know we're over time, but the Ethiopian version of Judaism is fascinating. I just happen to be reading their text, which includes additional books like the books of Jubilee and so on. But they only recognize the original Tanakh. They do not recognize the Talmud or any subsequent writings or any rabbinical work. Yeah, very, very stuck to the most ancient of Judaism. And so it's plausible that they do have the original ark. And we need to get Harrison Ford down there and get
One of the things that came to mind, we see this several times in Torah also. The first time this expression occurs is in the disappearance of Enoch. And he goes to be with God.
Mhm.
That's all it
The
says.
disappearing of who?
He goes to be with God.
Yeah.
It's gone. God takes him away. God takes him away. It occurs also in a way with Moses. He walks off, disappears. You bring to the table the ark. Okay. And is it, and Elijah?
Elijah.
We're still waiting. At Passover, we're going to be opening the door to see if he comes in. And so so that's a mysterious part of everything. Some people have said that Enoch becomes Elijah. I have no way of knowing. But rumor has it in some circles. That's what they think. I don't know. But if it can. Okay, Suzanne has her up. I've tempted her enough. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, just in the Christian tradition, I guess
Yeah.
an appropriate way of saying this.
And it happens with Jesus too.
Enoch, Elijah, Yeshua, they are all examples of what a Christian would call being raptured up to heaven. And there are those, myself included, who believe that there will be a rapture before the 7-year tribulation. There are some Christians who believe this rapture will occur halfway through, and some believe it'll occur at the end. But anyways, not to get into any theological discussion about that. But these are references of being taken up to heaven. And like I said, we call that being raptured, and we do believe that it will happen.
Right.
So, I just find it fascinating how different groups of what all based on the Judeo-Christian, and I'm going to add into the Islamic, they have some version of this, which I think is fascinating. It's the mysterious aspect to it. All writings have certain things that we just cannot answer, and that happens in all religions, even Aboriginal, American Indian. There are certain things that happen and we can't explain.
The flood story is an example of that, Marty, that seems to transcend different religious
Exactly.
experiences. Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe there's no hard evidence. We keep trying to look for hard evidence. Some people have found things that may be what we're looking for. I don't know. But maybe that's good to have something that's a little mysterious. Maybe that's the key that it causes us to be attracted to other people. That person has some mysterious aura about them that attracts you. Who knows? But anyway, I'm rambling now, and I know we're over time, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to get certain things in. And Michael, thank you. There was another hand up at the time. Did we cover everything? There was, and when I interrupted everything because I wanted to get so we didn't have to go all the way back again.
I think it was David.
Well, I just wanted to know if we're meeting next week.
Oh, okay. I'm ready to do it next. Well, it's in the middle of
Passover.
Passover.
Yeah.
I do not mind doing it.